The cinematic look. It's definitely a goal for a lot of content creators, but it takes a lot of work to get to that point. There is pre-production, there is set design, there is, of course, costume design, cinematography, lens choice, framing and composition, film stock, film print, color grading. Did I mention lighting? I probably mentioned lighting already. There's so many different things that need to come together correctly to truly achieve your vision and for your look to look truly cinematic. And there's no one-click solution. There's no easy one-button thing that you can press that will just instantly turn your work into a cinema masterpiece. But with that said, there is one portion of all of that that can be made a lot easier and do a lot of heavy lifting for you. You still have to do all the other stuff. Don't skimp. Don't get lazy. It still needs to be done, but this one section will really do a lot of work for you. What we're talking about today is Dehancer Pro, but before we get into it, let's make some coffee. Before I get too far into the rest of this video, I do need to let you know I've been looking at Dehancer Pro for a very long time, very intrigued by it, and I really wanted to play with it, which is why I was so delighted when I got an email from them asking me to take a look at their software and review it for you guys. So this is a sponsored video. It is a proper review in that I will tell you my thoughts and feelings about it. They're not in giving any sort of editorial control. They don't get to see the video before I put it up. I won't pull it if they're unhappy with it. It is what it is. But with that said, they have actually asked me to be as harsh as I can be, to be as honest and realistic in my use of the software and my reporting of it, because they want to know. They want to know any issues, any problems that people have, so that they can address those and fix that. And I think that is fantastic. I get no monetary reward for doing the video. I do, however, get to use and keep the software, which is a hunky-dory in my book because I think it's a fantastic piece of software. I've been enjoying it an awful lot. I've only been using it for just about a month now, so there's still a lot for me to learn. There's still a lot of the fine details for me to get a grasp on, but I think I've got my mind wrapped around what it is and what it does and where it might fit in your usages. So with that said, let's break this down. There's a lot of reviews out there. There's a lot of videos about Dehancer Pro, so I'm not going to retread old ground. I'm not going to go through step by step of what all the modules in the software do. I'm also not going to give you a step-by-step tutorial on how to use it. Something like that may come later, but for now we're talking broad strokes. I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm going to tell you what I like about it. I'm going to tell you where I think that this fits into a creator's arsenal of tools. And then finally, we're going to tie it up with the one or two things that I don't really like so much. So what is it? It is a plugin. It is originally designed for DaVinci Resolve, although there are now other versions of it out there. There's one for Premiere Pro and After Effects. I believe there's one for Final Cut. Fairly, expansive in the market. If you've got software for editing, you can probably end up using this. I chose the Resolve version because I like to do most of my color work in Resolve. It's a beefy, hefty piece of software. So it is a plugin, and what you're going to do is you're going to feed it some footage, some raw footage. Preferably, you want to have that at a Rec 709 or come from a specific camera. They have a list of cameras where you can feed the brand, the model, and the color profile of that camera, and then the software just knows what to expect. If you don't have one of those cameras, don't worry. Switch it over to Rec 709. You should probably be good. The second part of it is everything is a series of modules. You can turn them on or off, but the three most important ones are that input one, the color, the film stock one, and the print one. Those three in order. Those are the first ports of call that you want to go for. So the input one I've mentioned, the film stock, there are over 60 plus different film stocks, some experimental, some common, some come from the photo realm. A lot of them, of course, come from the motion picture realm. These have been analyzed, they've been tested, they've been measured, and they've been put in there. And it's not a lot. It's not as simple as just converting A to B and being done with it. These react to your footage accurately. The way color reacts on film when it is overexposed, underexposed, in a light area, in a dark area, where the contrast levels are, all that sort of stuff. Film reacts very organically and predictably in a way that LUTs don't. So you select your color film next, and that's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. It's going to do a lot of the changes to your output right at that point. The third one is the output, and that's a film print. So you have 4 different options there, or 5, can't remember. There's a linear, which is just basic, just leave it at that. There is a Cineform, and there's a couple of other ones, and they're going to actually add the film print output. They add a little bit more crunch, I think, a little bit more contrast. It's the final stage of when you're actually manufacturing a film before it goes to be projected. So you kind of want to do those 3 in order. Input, film stock, film print. After that, anything else can be left off or turned on as you want. And there are so many options. Now, it seems daunting at first, but if you take it one section at a time, just enable it and play with it. And I could tell you what they all do. I don't really need to. The documentation from Dehancer is fully comprehensive, covers just about everything that you need to know in a very, very easy to understand and very accessible way. So have that open, play with it, just dial things in, move it this way, move it that way, see what it does, turn it on or off. You'll get your head around it really, really fast. It's quite simple. Things like print heads, things like halation, things like bloom. Of course, you've excuse me, you've got a grain, you've got just more things than I can remember. Just a ton of different options in there. And if you just play with them, turn them on or off, you'll start to feel exactly what they do and how they work together. The great thing about all of this is that when you're choosing your print film, the labels, the names are the actual prints that they're emulated on. So this is not a color grading software. This is film emulation. You can quite easily feed it some footage, run it through there, adjust a few things, and get quite a nice output and be happy with that. But if you want to color grade, you are best to put this software at the end of the pipeline. So at the very, very end of, in DaVinci, it would be your node tree. In Premiere, it would be the last plugin in the line, etc., and do all your color grading before it hits this. That way, you're not color grading the output of the software, you're feeding it the color graded software, and then it's going to add that much more to it. It is not, like I said, it is not a color grading software per se, so you won't find a whole bunch of presets labeled Mad Max, Matrix, Children of Men, Mel Bay explosions, that sort of thing. It's not something where you just select it and you're done. This is something where you're selecting the film output, you are dialing in the specific details that you want, and then just before that, then if you want to introduce a little bit more orange into the skin, a little bit more teal into the background, if you're going for that Hollywood look, a little bit more yellow-green if you're going for that sickly sci-fi or horror look, etc., you do all your color grading before this, and then you use this for your output. It is a fantastic piece of software. I've really enjoyed using it. I've really enjoyed creating little bits and pieces that I've shown you all the way through this video. It is quite powerful, much more powerful than I expected, and much more powerful than any other similar piece of software that I've used. We'll come back to that in a second. Let's have another sip of coffee because I made it. Why not drink it? So that's pretty much what it is. Where does it fit in the realm of the creator's use? Well, it is a fairly pricey piece of software. I will admit, this is jumping ahead to the things I don't like about it, it is quite expensive. There are some ways that you can get it. There's a 3-month, a 6-month, and a 1-year license, or there's a perpetual license. There's also a light version of the software, which strips things back a little bit and has its own pricing structure, another chunk down. And on top of all of that, there is now a phone version if you use iOS. I'm an Android user, so I wasn't able to check out or test that one in any way, but it looks pretty good. And if you're interested in just stepping into it and playing around with it with your phone, or maybe if you've got I don't know, any sort of software like hardware combination device, like I guess an Insta360 or something like that, where you're doing that, you could probably try it.
Oh, hey, sitting here editing this video, and I realized I completely forgot to mention a couple of things to you. Not only is Dehancer Pro and Dehancer Lite available for both Resolve, Premiere Pro, and After Effects, and Final Cut, also it's available for both Mac and PC. There is, of course, the phone version that I mentioned, something about an online version, although I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. I haven't been able to access it, but it seems like there is an online version there. But more importantly than all of that is that there is also a Photoshop version. So if you're not into video making, if you're not looking for it as content creator, but you're looking for your photo and your stills work, there is that version, which is quite a bit less expensive. It's $199 US for a lifetime, on just $129 for a year as a plugin, and it gives you all the same profiles, the same camera profiles, the same developer stuff, bloom, halation, all that sort of stuff that you could instantly apply to your work in Photoshop, which I think is phenomenal. On top of all of that, the one big thing that I did forget to mention is that the Resolve, and I believe the Premiere version as well, is able to export its settings as a LUT. Now, I said before that LUTs are organic and that they respond to what you're putting into it, but it can put out a version of its work as a LUT. Certain things will not transfer over. Certain things like, I believe the film grain won't move naturally the way it normally does. You won't get the film damage effect in the LUT, stuff like that. But the film profile, the print profile, can be baked into a LUT and then used elsewhere if you need to, which is, I think, fantastic. So yeah, let's back to the video.
It is a fairly pricey piece of software, so it's not something that I would recommend someone just jump into. If you're only creating a little bit every now and then, maybe try out your other options, try all the built-in tools that you can, and see if you can really push those to the limit before you jump into something like this. But if you are a creator who's creating constantly, whether you are a YouTube creator and you want to lift your B-roll game, if you're a travel vlogger and you just want to personalize your output and have it less clinical looking and a little bit more organic warmth to what you're doing, I think it really falls in line with that very, very well. If you're an independent or even slightly larger filmmaker and you're making actual shorts or full features, I think it really suits those people perfectly. In fact, the cost at that point becomes a no-brainer. It's part of what you should have in your arsenal. You should be doing some color grading, you should be doing some final film emulation, and give your work some polish. It's going to make all the difference. Like I said, you want to be cinematic, and that starts at the very beginning with pre-production, and it ends at the end of the pipeline with your film emulation and all those steps in between. Don't skimp on any of them, and your work will truly shine. So that's kind of where I think it falls in. Like I said, if you are live streaming, it's not for you. If you are just producing a couple of reels for TikTok and Instagram, it's probably not for you. Although take a look at the iPhone version if you've got an access to an iPhone. But yeah, if you're just doing quick videos every now and then, not too many, yeah, not really for you. But for people who are working with film and image a lot and really want to take pride in their production, they really want to take their post-production skills to the next level, I think it really is worth taking a look at. In terms of things that I don't like, the one I've already mentioned, I think it is quite expensive. I would love to see it be a little bit less expensive. Now, I think they've probably had this comment before. That's the reason why there's Dehancer Lite, which is about half the price. So I've already answered my problem here. I do like the full version because it does have everything and they're all really, really nice. And I can't think of any one module, any one part that I would want to give up. There's nothing that I would want to do without. But the light version is there and it is less expensive and it's only losing a few things and they're not the core features. So you still have all the print emulations that you have in the full one. So it's a pretty good choice. The other thing about it is, and this is something, again, I've kind of already answered, but it is my only major gripe with the software. When you choose your film emulation, your film stock, there are a couple of things that you can set. You can push or pull the exposure and that sort of thing, but there is no opacity or amount or level. You can't dial in the look. It's either on or off. That's it. Now, I looked into their documentation and they address this right there. They say that in the real world, when you're using film, it's exactly like that. It's on or off. You're using film or you're not. And so they've adopted the same approach in their software. You're either using it or you're not. There's no half measures in using film, so we haven't implemented that in the software, which I understand the theory behind that. I understand the mindset. I don't 100% agree with it, but I understand where it is. However, they immediately in their documentation give you a workaround to do exactly what I'm talking about. And what you would want to do is, if you're using Resolve, you're going to set up two nodes. You're going to put Dehancer on both nodes, and on the first node, you're going to select your input, and you are going to select your film emulation, and you're going to turn everything else off. So that handles the coloring. On the second node, you're going to set your input to Rec 709. You're going to turn off the film stock, and then you can dial in everything else exactly as you want. That way you can have all the film grain, all the halation, all the everything else as at full strength, fully affecting your work. And the first one affects your color, and because it is a node in Resolve, you can control the output. You can dial it back to 0.5 or 0.3, etc. I think it's a decent workaround. It does the job. However, it does mean you need to run two versions of the plugin, even though they're not doing as much. That is just a little bit more unwieldy than it should be, and it does mean that you're having more weight on your system. You're slowing your system down by running two instances of something where it could be as easy as having a slider. The fact is that, yeah, like they said, in the real world, you can't select anywhere in between. You're either using film or not. I would postulate that in the real world, if you're using film, you can't dial in which film you're using. You can't change the film stock after the fact, which is something else the software lets you do. So I think it's a bit redundant. I would love to see them introduce that slider just to dial it back, because the fact is that the output is fantastic. The color is really, really nice. The additional features such as grain, halation, bloom, all those things that I've mentioned are really the icing on the cake, but sometimes specifically for work that I'm trying to do that is maybe a little less filmic, and I just want to dial it back just a little bit. I want a little bit closer. I want a 20/80 blend. I want 20% more Rec 709 and 80% of that film stock. I'd like to blend that in a little bit more without having to resort to a workaround or something like that. Thank you so much, Dehancer, for sending this on. I really have enjoyed using it. I'm looking forward to continuing to use it, to integrating it into all my upcoming work, because I can really see this becoming a cornerstone of my processing. It just adds so much life, so much warmth, so much feel to the output that I don't think I'd want to live without it anymore. Anyway, with that all said, yeah, it's up to you guys if you think that this is going to fit into your workflow. I do recommend check out a trial if you can, because it definitely is worth playing with. It's worth understanding, and it's worth knowing that it's out there, so that when you do want to do something truly cinematic, as I've said at the beginning, Don't skimp. Don't be lazy. Look at your lighting, your set dressing, all that stuff. But this might be the final icing on the cake to truly elevate your work to the stars or something like that. I don't know. Thank you guys so much. Look after yourselves. And yeah, as always, stay creative. Done.